What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today we are going to be reacting to Brent Sobleski's 2025 Way Too Early NFL Mock Draft. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, coming in at number 1, it looks like we got the New York Giants going Carson Beck, the quarterback from Georgia. And I'm a Giants fan, so maybe a little bit biased, but unless they're talking about a trade up here, I don't think the Giants are going to be bad enough to get this number 1 pick. It doesn't look like it's a trade up. So Giants are picking number 1. If they are picking number 1, we got to go quarterback. That means Daniel Jones really did a bad job, and I guess Drew Lock probably didn't do much better. The only problem is this isn't the best quarterback class. We got guys like Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Connor Wigman is a really fun player, but he hasn't played much at the college level. Same with a guy like Jalen Daniels. He was hurt last season, but I really don't think there's a quarterback worth the number 1 overall pick. But when you got desperate teams in need of a quarterback, they're going to fly off the board. And I think that if the Giants are going to take quarterback here at number 1, I think it should be Carson Beck. I think he's the best, most safe pick at the quarterback position. I think he's probably a better Kenny Pickett, a higher floor Kenny Pickett is what I would, comp Carson Beck to as of right now, which isn't the best as a Giants fan, but sure. Moving on, we got the New England Patriots taking James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee. Now, I really like James Pierce. I believe he's my 3rd best player in the class that I've ranked so far. He's just an uber athlete. Think Dallas Turner with maybe even a little bit more juice to him. The problem with James Pierce is that he's just, not the most refined. But the Patriots need an edge rusher. I think Matthew Judon's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to come back to New England, so they're going to be in need of an edge rusher. And with the number 2 pick, you got your quarterback of the future. Why not get your defensive centerpiece in James Pierce Jr.? Moving on to number 3, we got the Panthers taking Will Campbell, the offensive tackle out of LSU. They invested heavily on that interior of the offensive line with Robert Hunt and, oh my God, who was the other offensive guard they signed? It was Damian Lewis. So they signed 2 guards to massive contracts. Why not completely fill out this offensive line with Will Campbell? I presume you're either, kicking Ike Ekwonu to the curb, or maybe you're, putting him to the left side. Maybe Will Campbell goes to the left side. Either way, keep investing on that offensive line because Bryce Young needs it. I don't mind the pick at all. Moving on, we got number 4, the Las Vegas Raiders taking Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback from Colorado. And again, the Raiders are in need of a quarterback similar to the Giants. Do I think there's a quarterback worth the top 5 pick? Not necessarily. But, Gardner Minshew is not the long-term answer. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is going to work out there. So the Raiders need a quarterback. And if I was a GM, I would be taking Shedeur Sanders here. And, you might not like it. There's a lot of concerns with his, quote-unquote leadership problems and the baggage he's going to be taking to Las Vegas. But the talent's there. He's a very smart quarterback. He's got all the mental intangibles to be a really good quarterback. He's just, he doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the most athletic player in the world, but, I think he could have a chance to succeed. Moving on to number 5, we got the Arizona Cardinals going Mykel Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia. And I've watched Mykel Williams a good amount. I don't think he's, got top 5 pick upside. I do think he's got some good upside, and he's got a lot of developing to do. But at number 5, that's a little too rich for me with guys like Nick Scourton still on the board and even a JT Tuimoloau. But the Cardinals need to keep filling out that defensive line. They got guys like BJ Ojulari on the other side. Why not pair him up with another edge rusher? I just don't necessarily think Mykel Williams would be that guy for me. Moving on to number 6, we got the Denver Broncos going Luther Burden. My wide receiver number 1, pairing him alongside with Courtland Sutton, or even, being the Courtland Sutton replacement. Either way, I think the Broncos need to keep building out that offensive core for, Bo Nix to have guys to throw to. Not mad at that pick at all. Moving on to number 7, we got another quarterback going here with Jalen Milroe. I assume being the successor to Geno Smith. And, they got Sam Howell with, from the trade with the Commanders. I'm not a Sam Howell believer. I guess this guy isn't either. Geno Smith, again, he had a late career resurgence, But again, he's a little bit of an older quarterback. You're going to have to find answers at some point, and I guess this is the draft class to do it. Jalen Milroe, athletic freak, similar to another former Alabama quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Really good arm strength, really good arm talent in general, athletic, supremely athletic, but, everything upstairs is a work in progress. Being able to read defenses, diagnose blitzes, and, just moving through his progressions. All of that's a bit of a, work in progress with Jalen Milroe, but if a guy like Jalen Hurts was able to figure it out, I'm not gonna doubt that Jalen Milroe can't. Coming in at number 8, looks like we're going Tetairoa McMillan to the New Orleans Saints, and I've really started to come around to Tetairoa McMillan. When I first watched him, I thought he was a worse version of Keon Coleman, maybe a less athletic version of him. But the more I watch him, the more I'm falling in love with his contested catch ability and just his hands in general. And I think he's a perfect fit for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, you got Chris Olave being that, guy that can create separation. You got Rashid Shaheed being that deep threat. And then you got Tetairoa McMillan being that contested catch guy and that red zone threat. I think, that would make one of the best receiving cores in the NFL and the most complete and balanced wide receiver core. So I like that pick a lot. If you want even more draft content and my full 2025 draft guide, my Patreon is the perfect thing for you. You'll get access to all of my player rankings, which are updated daily. Plus, you'll get to see my full summer eval on players, advanced stats on players, and my draft grades on them as well. Not to mention weekly mock drafts and mock draft reactions. It's the best way to support me and the channel, not to mention it's only $5. Again, only $5. You can't even get a Big Mac for that price anymore. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description or the pinned link in the comments, and join the family over there on Patreon. Now, back to the video. Moving on to number 9, we got the Washington Commanders taking they got him listed at cornerback, Travis Hunter, and I would like to see Travis Hunter transition to a receiver full time, but they got him listed at cornerback, and the Commanders do need a cornerback, so we'll talk about him as a cornerback and his fit as a cornerback to the Commanders. And I don't know how I feel about this, and hear me out. They drafted Emmanuel Forbes last year, very undersized cornerback. Travis Hunter isn't, the most bulky cornerback in the world either. I believe he's listed at 185. I wouldn't be surprised if he's 175, in all reality. So having two small cornerbacks out there, I don't know how ideal of a situation that would be, but Travis Hunter has all the athleticism and skill to make this work, but having two lighter cornerbacks as your two cornerstones, I don't know how I feel about that. But as a receiver, I would like this a lot, pairing him alongside with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Moving on, we got the Minnesota Vikings taking Will Johnson. Finally, he comes off the board. Will Johnson's my number 1 player in this class, and I haven't watched everyone yet, but he's probably going to comfortably be my number 1 player. I don't think that's going to be contested much. But yeah, the unfortunate tragedy of Kyrie Jackson. The Vikings thought they got their guy in Kyrie Jackson, and I think they did as well, but he unfortunately passed away this, off season. So getting Will Johnson is almost, ideal for him. I think Will Johnson has, the upside to be in that Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain, Jalen Ramsey, echelon of cornerbacks. Just really good in zone coverage, really good in man coverage, just all around very good player. So getting a player like that at number 10, I think is a steal. Moving to number 11, we got the Tennessee Titans going Emory Jones, the offensive tackle from LSU. Now, I presume they would be playing him at offensive tackle. I think he's got a lot of guard flexibility. I believe I think he was recruited as a guard, if I'm not mistaken. I could be getting that switched up with someone else, but I'm pretty sure he was recruited as a guard and LSU stuck him at tackle. And he's a really good right tackle for LSU. I think this isn't a bad range for him. And the Titans are just continuing to fill out that offensive line. They took Peter Skronsky last year, J.C. Latham. They took this past year to move to left tackle. They signed Lloyd Cushenberry at center, and Emory Jones to presumably play right tackle or even maybe right guard. I think that's really good making to be a very, very good offensive line to protect Will Levis. I'm not mad at that pick at all. Moving on to number 12, we got the Chicago Bears taking Nick Scourton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M, formerly from Purdue. And I talked about him earlier. I think he would have been a better pick at number 5 than Michael Williams was. Nick Skelton is more of that big, beefy edge rusher. Complete opposite of a guy like James Pierce, who's an athletic freak. Nick Skelton's that big, bulky, just powerful edge rusher who's going to be able to set the edge, be a really good run defender, and completely overpower some of these offensive tackles. So I really like that a lot, pairing him alongside Montez Sweat. That would be a really good run defending edge duo. Moving on to 13, we got the Los Angeles Chargers taking Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. And yeah, I think he's a top 5 player in this class as well. So the Chargers getting a Michigan guy here at 13 for Jim Harbaugh, obviously the old Michigan head coach. Mason Graham's got way too much talent to be slipping here to number 13. I think he's one of the best block shedding defensive tackles I've ever seen. So getting him here at 13 is an absolute steal, and it helps a lot that he's a Michigan player for Jim Harbaugh. I like the pick a lot. Moving on to 14 here, we got the Dallas Cowboys taking Evan Stewart, the receiver from Oregon, formerly from Texas A&M. And the Cowboys need to pair someone alongside CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks is up there in age. I mean, yeah, they need a receiver. I'm not the biggest fan of Evan Stewart. I think there's a lot better guys here to take, like a Torrey Horton, a Trey Harris, a Tez Johnson, who's also on the smaller side and is going to be his teammate. Who else is there? There's Deion Burks. There's a lot of guys I would take ahead of Evan Stewart, but I like the receiver pick here, just not the actual player. I would have gone probably with Trey Harris or Emeka Egbuka. Moving on to 15, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars going cornerback Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. And again, really good value here. I mean, Benjamin Morrison is probably another top 5 player for me, so getting him here at 15 is an absolute steal. Jaguars need defensive back help, and I think Benjamin Morrison could be a lockdown corner for the next 10 years for Jacksonville. Moving on to 16 here, we got the Jets taking Deone Walker, the defensive tackle out of Kentucky. And yeah, the Jets have an amazing defensive line already. Adding Deone Walker to it would be a little OD, but very good player. Very quick for his size. Again, he's like, what is he, like 330, 340, but he moves like a guy that's sub 300. The only problem I got with Deone Walker is I think he's a little bit high out of his stance, but besides that, I think he's got the potential to be a Dexter Lawrence-esque player. If he can develop his pass rush moveset, I think he could be a Dexter Lawrence-esque player. So pairing him along with Quinnen Williams would be a very, very scary sight to see for opposing offensive lines. Moving on to 17 here, we got the Indianapolis Colts going Colston Loveland, that tight end out of Michigan. And I was pounding the table for the Colts to think about taking Brock Bowers last year. I think that getting Anthony Richardson, a really good tight end, a really athletic tight end, is a very good idea. And Colston Loveland is that. He's no Brock Bowers by any means, but he's a very good receiving tight end who, despite his size at, 245, despite that smaller size, I think he's a very, serviceable blocker, especially if you get him out moving and on motions. I think he's a, decent move blocker. He's not going to be an inline tight end by any means, but just getting Anthony Richardson another target to throw to in Colston Loveland, I like that pick a lot. Moving on to 18, we got the Cleveland Browns taking Kelvin Banks. Again, really good value here. Browns could use some offensive tackle help, and Kelvin Banks is probably my offensive tackle number 2. So getting him here at 18 is a very good pick here. Moving on, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Ollie Gordon, the running back out of Oklahoma State. Now, the Buccaneers just took one of my favorite running backs from last year in Bucky Irving. Do I think that's going to stop them from taking an Ollie Gordon here? No. The only problem I have is this is a very stacked running back class. So is it really worth taking a running back here at 19 when you got Rachaad White as well in the backfield? Probably not. This isn't taking anything away from Ollie Gordon. He's my running back 1, but I think there's more pressing needs here. You could look to go edge rusher here, and off the top of my head, I guess you could go JT Tuimoloau here. I think running back's a bit of a luxury pick, and I don't think the Buccaneers are in position to be taking luxury picks here. Coming in at number 20, we got the Eagles going Abdul Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State. Now, Abdul Carter played linebacker for the most part last year, and he was not a good linebacker. He had a very high missed tackle rate. We didn't really get to see many reps of him playing edge rusher, but in the reps we did get to see, he was really good. So I got a lot of faith in Abdul Carter to be a really good edge rusher, but I'm not ready to put him in the first round when we really haven't seen him yet. And, a lot of people are calling him the next Micah Parsons, that linebacker edge rusher hybrid. He's not Micah Parsons. He's not that linebacker that Micah Parsons was, let alone the edge rusher. But I'm excited to see what he can do at the edge rushing position, him alongside with Danny Dennis Sutton there at Penn State. That's going to be really interesting to see. Moving on to 21, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers going Will Howard, the quarterback out of Ohio State. Wow. Now, I'm not going to speak too much on Will Howard. I did my quarterback deep dive. I did about 15 quarterbacks, and for some reason I didn't do Will Howard. He's my next quarterback to go through. So I'm not going to speak too much about him, but from what I've heard from other people, I don't think they really see him as a first-round player. The Steelers just traded for, Justin Fields. I understand why Russell Wilson isn't in their long-term future, but I think Justin Fields can be a starting caliber quarterback for a team. So I don't think this is the best pick here. I think the Steelers could go cornerback here. I think that would be a little bit more likely and, what I would like to see. Moving on to 22, we got the Atlanta Falcons going Jack Sawyer, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. And, the Falcons need edge rush help. They addressed it in this last draft class with Braylon Trice, someone who I was really high on. But if we're going to go edge rusher here, I'd like to see JT Tuimoloau. I think he's a little bit better than Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer is really good at run defense and, setting the edge and, stopping the run. But I don't necessarily know how much pass rush upside he's going to provide for Atlanta. So I'd like to see them go with JT Tuimoloau if you're going to go edge rusher. But I'd also like to see them go cornerback as well. Getting, someone alongside AJ Terrell would be a really good idea in my opinion. Moving on to 23, we got the Los Angeles Rams taking offensive tackle. Here we go. We're going to try this. I've heard it pronounced as Jonah Savaiinaea. Some people pronounce it as Jonah Savaiinaea. I've heard a lot of pronunciations. Until I hear it from the man himself, I'm going to go Jonah Savaiinaea. I think that sounds the best. But he's an offensive tackle / offensive guard. I think he could survive at tackle. But a lot of people want to push him into guard. Either way, the Rams could use some offensive line help, and they like their beef. And Jonah Savaiinaea has got a lot of beef to provide. So pause. I don't know why I just said that. But yeah, he's a thick guy. Like, pause again. Jeez. But yeah, Jonah Savaiinaea is, he's got a lot of weight to throw around, and that's what the Rams really like. So I like the fit there. Moving on to 24, we got the Baltimore Ravens going interior offensive lineman Tyler Booker. And I do think Tyler Booker is hands down the best interior option in the draft. And I do think he's a first-round pick. And I like the fit with the Ravens. So, yeah, I haven't really done a deep dive into offensive guards yet, but I've seen a little bit of Tyler Booker, and I've liked it. So, I'm not mad at that pick at all. Moving on to 25, we got the Green Bay Packers taking Jabbar Muhammad, the cornerback out of Oregon. And the Packers don't really need much in general. So whatever they pick, I'm probably going to like. And I think they could use someone to pair alongside Jair Alexander. And, Jabbar Muhammad, from the little I've seen of him so far, I really like. So a solid pick in my opinion. Getting some more first-round draft pick capital on that defense. They got so many first-round picks on that defense. Adding Jabbar Muhammad, good idea in my opinion. Moving on to 26, we got the Cincinnati Bengals going edge rusher JT Tuimoloau. I've talked about him a lot throughout this video. I think he's got a lot of pass rush upside. Hasn't necessarily put it together, but we've seen flashes of JT Tuimoloau absolutely demolishing offensive linemen. So he's just got to put it all together. Hopefully he can, and if he does, I think he'd be a good fit for the Bengals. Moving on to 27, we got the Dolphins taking Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. And yeah, I think Malachi Starks is a very good player. Haven't done a deep dive on him yet. But from what I've seen, he's a very good player. And the Dolphins like speed. And I think Malachi Starks has got enough speed to be a Dolphins-type player. So having him and Jalen Ramsey in the same backfield, that's a scary sight to see. Moving on to 28, we got the Buffalo Bills going to Takario Davis, the cornerback from Arizona. And I like the fit here. They got rid of Tre'Davious White. He was injury-prone. He had one foot out the door at Buffalo. So, getting a replacement in Takario Davis is a really good idea. And he's just a really tall cornerback who's really instinctual in zone coverage. Doesn't have the best change of direction skills, but I think it's a good fit there in Buffalo. At 29, we got the 49ers going Denzel Burke, another cornerback. A lot of cornerbacks going in this mock draft. But yeah, I think Denzel Burke's a first-round caliber player. I thought they could have went cornerback last year in the first round. They ended up going Ricky Pearsall. But yeah, getting Denzel Burke to pair alongside Charvarius Ward is a really good idea in my opinion. So I don't got much to say about that one. Moving on to number 30, we got the Chiefs going Ernest Green III out of Georgia. I'm not the biggest fan of Ernest Green. For one, I do think he's an offensive guard. I like how they have him listed as OL because I don't really know what Ernest Green is. You know, he's a massive guy, but he doesn't do it for me. Athletically, I don't think he's anything special, and technique-wise, I think he needs a lot of improvement. So, you know, maybe the Chiefs can get the best out of him, but I don't think he's a day one type of player, and I don't think he's a day two type of player. I think he's a day three talent in my opinion. Moving on to 31, we got the Houston Texans going Emeka Egbuka. I mean, I guess they just signed Nico Collins to a big deal. Tank Dell's on a rookie contract, and he's really good. Stephon Diggs they just traded for, so I don't know if the Texans has got room for Emeka Egbuka. I think that there's some better options we could go here. If you want to get, fancy with, receiver, I'd rather get fancy with a running back like a Quinshon Judkins to pair alongside Joe Mixon, who's, an aging running back. So if you're going to go fancy, I would go running back here. And then rounding off this list, we got number 32, the Detroit Lions going Harold Perkins Jr., the linebacker / edge rusher out of LSU. And I think Harold Perkins is what a lot of people think that Abdul Carter is. I think that Harold Perkins is a really good edge rusher. He's just a little bit light. I believe he's like 225 pounds. So he would have to add some weight to be a full-time edge rusher. Right now he plays mostly off-ball linebacker for LSU, and I think he's really good at that as well. Pairing up him alongside with Jack Campbell, I mean, the Lions aren't afraid of taking first-round linebackers. So I think if they were willing to take Jack Campbell, midway through the first round, I think this would be a steal for them to take Harold Perkins to end out the first round. But yeah, that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys think of this mock draft. I thought it was pretty good for the most part. There were some picks I didn't agree with, but that's going to happen in all way too early mock drafts. So yeah, if you liked the video, consider subscribing, hitting that like button. And as always, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.